The betrayal night, when everything changed forever. Arrest of Jesus. That night did not end in the room. It only began there. Because some nights are not meant to pass. They are meant to change everything. The air was still, but heavy. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that comes before something breaks. And somewhere, deep in that silence, destiny was already moving. Walking into darkness, they walked together through narrow streets, stone beneath their feet, shadows stretching beside them. No one spoke, not because they had nothing to say, but because they didn't know what to say. Have you ever felt that? That moment when everything feels normal, but inside something feels wrong? That's where they were. Confused, uncertain, but unable to turn back. And ahead of them walked Jesus Christ, calm, steady, as if he already knew where this road would end. The garden, a place of silence. They reached a garden, Gethsemane, a place they had come to before, a place of quiet, of reflection. But tonight, it felt different, because places don't change, moments do. He stopped, turned to them, his eyes calm, but deeper than before. Stay here and watch. Simple words, but they carried weight, because sometimes the simplest instructions are the hardest to follow. The prayer, inner breakdown. He walked further, alone, because there are moments in life where no one can walk with you. No friend, no follower, no one. He fell to the ground, not in weakness, but under the weight of what was coming. And for the first time, we see something different. Not power, not miracles, but humanity. Father, if it is possible, let this pass from me. That line alone is deeper than people realize, because even the strongest feel the weight of pain. Even those who guide others have moments where they ask, why me? But then comes the difference. But not my will, yours. And that is where strength truly begins. Reflection. Audience connect. Add watch time. Think about this. Most people pray only to escape pain. But real strength comes when you accept what you cannot escape. This moment was not about avoiding suffering. It was about accepting purpose. The sleeping disciples. He returned and found them asleep. Not once, not twice, but again. And this part is painfully real. Because when you are at your lowest, people don't always understand. They don't stay awake. They don't see your struggle. Not because they don't care, but because they cannot feel what you feel. Stay awake, he said. Not in anger, but in quiet disappointment. The arrival, tension builds. Then, it happened. Footsteps, torches, voices. The silence broke. And once silence breaks like that, it never comes back the same way. The darkness was no longer empty. It was coming, with intention, with force, with decision. Judas, the betrayal. At the front was Judas Iscariot. A familiar face, a known presence, which makes it worse, because betrayal never comes from strangers. He walked forward, slowly. Every step, a decision. Every breath, a confirmation. And then, he came close. A kiss. Simple, quiet, but powerful. Because sometimes, the smallest actions carry the biggest consequences. Reflection. Deep thought layer. Just an action. It is a moment where trust breaks. And once broken, it never returns the same way. The arrest, 30 to 34 minutes. The soldiers stepped forward, hands reached, chains ready. And here, everything could have changed. He could have resisted. He could have escaped. But he didn't. Why? Because purpose is not always about fighting. Sometimes it is about surrender. This is the path, and he accepted it. Disciples scattered. Fear spread quickly, and fear changes people. The same ones who said, "We will stay," ran, left, disappeared. And again, this is real, because people stay until things become difficult. Then they choose safety. Ending, powerful closure. And just like that, he was taken. Not defeated, not broken, but moving forward into something greater. Into judgment, into pain, into destiny. Because sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. Trials and judgment. The night continues. The night had not ended. It had only changed form. From silence to accusation. From prayer to judgment. Because sometimes the moment you are taken is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of how the world will judge you. And that night, Jesus Christ was no longer walking freely. He was being led into a system that had already decided its outcome. Taken into custody, they brought him through the streets, not with honor, but as a prisoner. Torches lit the path, but not the truth. And look closely at this moment, because it tells us something important. Truth does not always arrive in light. Sometimes it is dragged through darkness, and people do not always recognize it. The first trial, Sanhedrin, he was taken before the council, the leaders, the judges, the ones who were supposed to protect truth. But something felt off. The questions were not asked to understand. They were asked to trap. Tell us, who are you? But they already knew what answer they wanted. Reflection, provocon layer. Think about this. How many times do people ask questions, not to learn, but to confirm their own belief? This is not judgment. This is decision, disguised as justice. False witnesses. Voices rose, accusations came, stories twisted, words reshaped. Because when truth is dangerous, people create versions of it that feel safer. Witnesses spoke, but their words did not match. And still, they continued. Because sometimes people don't need truth, they need agreement. Silence. And in the middle of all this, he remains silent. No defense, no argument, no explanation. And this is one of the most powerful moments. Because silence in the face of chaos is not weakness, it is control. Deep reflection, audience hook. Ask yourself, why do we rush to defend ourselves, even when we know the truth? Because silence feels like losing. But sometimes silence is the highest form of strength. Before Pontius Pilate, they brought him to Pilate, a man of power, a man of authority, a man who could decide life or death. But even he was uncertain. "Are you the king?" he asked. Not with anger, but with curiosity. Because even power recognizes something different when it sees it. The dilemma. Pilate saw no crime, no threat, no rebellion. And yet, the crowd demanded something else. This is where the story changes, because now it is not about truth, it is about pressure. And pressure can change decisions. Reflection, crowd psychology. Crowds are powerful, but dangerous. Because in a crowd, individual thinking disappears, and emotion takes control. Have you ever seen it? One voice becomes many, and suddenly, wrong feels right. The crowd's choice. Release him, some might have thought, but the voices that grew louder were different. Crucify him. The word echoed again and again and again, until it became the only sound that mattered. Pilate's decision. Pilate hesitated. He looked at the man before him, calm, still, unshaken, and yet he turned to the crowd. Because sometimes leaders don't follow truth, they follow noise. And in that moment, he made a choice. The sentence, the decision was made, not because it was right, but because it was easier. And this is something the world still does. Choosing what is easy over what is true. Ending powerful closure. And just like that, judgment was passed. Not on truth, but on perception. Not on reality, but on pressure. And he accepted it. Because this was never about avoiding the path, it was about completing it.